You have read the books. You know the strategies. At some point in the last few years, you sat down with a plan. Maybe you wrote it out. Maybe you just held it clearly in your mind. The plan was good. It was genuinely good. And then something happened that was quieter and more frustrating than failure. Nothing happened. The plan sat there, intact, while your life continued in its familiar shape. Most people, when they notice this pattern, reach for more information, another framework, a better system, a course, a spreadsheet, a podcast. They assume the gap between knowing and doing is a knowledge gap. That assumption is costing them years. Here is what nobody in the financial space will tell you, because almost none of them know it. The reason you are not executing the plan you already have is not strategic. It is biological. Your body decided, long before you sat down to make that plan, whether or not you were safe enough to follow through on it. And your body has been quietly, invisibly, winning that argument ever since. This is not about willpower. It is not about belief or confidence or how badly you want it. It is about a mechanism inside you that is older than language, older than money, older than every piece of advice you have ever received about either one. By the time this is over, you will not see your bank account the same way you see it right now. Not because you will have a new strategy, because you will finally understand what has been intercepting every strategy you have ever had, and where in your own body that interception happens. Chapter 1. Your strategy is fine, your nervous system isn't. There is a pattern older than money itself. Across every culture that ever built a market, circulated a currency, or buried savings in the ground, a smaller group of people quietly accumulated while the larger group stayed stuck. Not because the larger group lacked information, not because they lacked desire. Something else was operating beneath the surface of their decisions, below the reach of their plans, below even their awareness. Something written not in ledgers or loan documents, but in the body itself. This pattern has repeated so many times across so many centuries that most people have stopped questioning it. They assume it is natural law. They assume the gap between people who build wealth and people who don't comes down to strategy, discipline, or luck. You are about to find out that assumption is wrong. And once you see what is actually driving the gap, no financial advice you have ever received will look quite the same. Here is a moment you may recognize. You have done the work. You have read the books, watched the videos, maybe talked to someone who seems to have figured things out. You have a plan, a real one. It has steps and timelines, and it is not naive. Then the moment arrives. The opportunity you have been waiting for is sitting right in front of you. Maybe it is a client who wants to hire you at a rate you have never charged before. Maybe it is a conversation about an investment you have researched for months. Maybe it is simply opening that application and pressing submit. And something stops you. Not logic, not a missing piece of information, something else. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts scatter. You tell yourself you need one more day, one more detail, one more confirmation that it is safe to move forward. You hesitate, or you stall, or you do something that has nothing to do with money at all. And afterward, when the moment has passed, you feel a particular kind of shame that is hard to name. Because you knew what to do, you just didn't do it. This is the question you need to hold right now, even if you do not have the answer yet. Why would a person with a working plan, genuine desire, and real information freeze at the exact moment execution was required? That question is the center of everything this book is about. Do not let go of it. Most financial advice treats that freeze as a mindset failure, a confidence problem, a willpower deficit. So the advice is always the same: push harder, think bigger, get more motivated, want it more intensely. And some people do push through. But even they often find that the next threshold brings the same freeze back, in a slightly different costume. Because the root was never addressed. The root was never even seen. Here is what most people are never told. Your nervous system keeps a ledger. It is not a spreadsheet. It has no columns and no currency symbol. But it is meticulous. Every experience you have ever had that felt threatening, every moment of financial panic you watched as a child, every time scarcity felt dangerous rather than merely uncomfortable, every relationship where money was used as control, every humiliation, every loss that came without warning, your nervous system recorded it. Not as a memory you can recall and examine, as a physical instruction set. A set of rules about what is safe and what is not, about when to move forward and when to stay still, about how much is allowed and what happens to people who want too much. Rewind to the state of your finances in that season 3 years ago with the numbers in view, not the number in your account. Think about the feeling, the background hum of it. The decisions you made from that feeling, the ones you did not even recognize as decisions at the time. The call you did not make. The price you did not quote. The risk you calculated as too large when looking back now, it was actually quite reasonable. That feeling had logic. It was not random. It was your nervous system executing instructions it had been given a long time ago. Instructions it believed were keeping you safe. The problem is those instructions were written for a version of your life that no longer exists. But the body does not automatically know that. The body does not update on its own. This is what it means to say your body keeps a ledger. And here is what makes that ledger expensive. Dysregulation is not just an emotional experience. It is a financial one. When your nervous system is in a state of low-grade threat, not panic, not crisis, just the ordinary hum of unresolved tension that many people carry so constantly they mistake it for their personality, your brain shifts resources. It pulls attention away from long-range planning. It makes risk calculation erratic, swinging between recklessness and paralysis in ways that feel intuitive but are actually just noise. It shortens your window of tolerance for discomfort, which means any financial move that involves uncertainty, which is all of them, feels more dangerous than it actually is. And it makes you spend, not always in dramatic ways, often in small, invisible ways. The quiet purchases that relieve tension for 40 minutes, the subscriptions you don't audit, the price you negotiated down when the original price was already fair, because asking for more felt exposing in a way you couldn't quite explain. Dysregulation is expensive. That is not a metaphor. That is a mechanical description of what happens inside a body that does not feel safe. Now meet Diane. Diane was 31 and worked as a freelance graphic designer in a mid-sized city. She was genuinely talented, her clients said so consistently, and she had been freelancing long enough that she had a stable roster of work. But her income had not grown in 3 years. Every year she told herself that next year she would raise her rates. Every year something stopped her. One year it was the economy. One year it was a slow quarter that felt like a warning. One year she drafted the email raising her rates to current market value, typed the whole thing out, read it twice, and deleted it. The thing is, Diane had a strategy. She had researched what her work was worth. She had a number in mind that was not greedy, not aggressive, just accurate. But the moment she moved toward executing it, something in her body said no. Not in words, in sensation. A tightening she associated with conflict. A low current of dread that she had been feeling since she was 9 years old and watched her mother's voice go quiet and careful every time her father came home on a payday when the money hadn't stretched the way it needed to. Diane did not think about her mother when she deleted that email. She was thinking about her clients, about whether they would leave, about whether she was worth what she was asking. But the feeling driving those thoughts was older than any of her clients. The ledger in her nervous system had an entry from that kitchen, from that recurring Tuesday evening tension, and the instruction it had written was simple. Wanting more leads to conflict. Conflict is dangerous. Stay small to stay safe. No strategy survives that instruction. That is the revelation this chapter is handing you, not at the end after you've earned it through theory, but right here in plain language, because you need to hear it now. When your body does not feel safe, your brain will not authorize wealth. It does not matter how sophisticated your plan is. It does not matter how much you understand about investing or pricing or negotiating. If your nervous system has logged enough experiences that associate financial expansion with danger, it will find a way to stop you. Every time. Not because you are weak, because it is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is protecting you from a threat that has not existed for years, maybe decades, but that lives on in your tissue as if it happened this morning. The hope in this, and there is real hope, is that a ledger can be amended. Not erased, not rewritten overnight, but amended. New entries can be made. The body can collect evidence that expansion is survivable, that asking for more does not end in abandonment or conflict or loss, that safety and growth can share space in the same nervous system. The work is real. It is not a visualization exercise and it is not positive thinking. But it is available to you. Understanding that the problem was never your strategy is the first and most important step in that work. Because you have been debugging the wrong system this whole time. Later on, we arrive at an argument about discipline and financial consistency that breaks with the story most people inherited. Once you grasp that turn, it changes how you act every single day. But before you get there, you need to understand something about the specific moment your nervous system learned that money was something to fear. Where did the first entry in that ledger come from? Chapter 2. The money trauma you don't remember having. You do not need a dramatic origin story. Every person who feels a quiet dread when they open their banking app believes the same thing about themselves. They believe something significant must have happened. A childhood of real scarcity, a parent who lost everything, a specific moment of humiliation tied to money. They are looking for the wound because they assume the wound has to be visible. That assumption is wrong, not slightly wrong, completely, structurally, foundationally wrong. The most expensive money trauma you carry may have no single moment you can point to, no event to explain it. And that is precisely why it has been running your financial life, unchallenged, for years. This chapter is going to show you where it actually came from. Here is the question that will follow you through the next several pages. I want you to hold it without answering it yet. Ask yourself this: what did money feel like in the room you grew up in? Not what your parents said about money, not what they earned or didn't earn. What did it feel like? Hold that question. We will come back to it. Most people draw a sharp line when they think about financial trauma. On one side, they put genuine hardship, evictions, empty refrigerators, parents working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. On the other side, they put everyone else. And if you grew up in a house where the bills got paid, where there was food on the table and a car in the driveway, you quietly assign yourself to that second group. You tell yourself you have no right to feel financially afraid. You tell yourself the problem must be discipline or strategy or ambition. That line is a fiction. Your nervous system does not care about your household income. It cares about signals. It cares about the emotional temperature of the adults in the room. It cares about whether money conversations sounded like calm planning or like a low-grade emergency. And what it records, it keeps. Every signal, every tone of voice, every tightened jaw at the kitchen table, that gets written into the ledger your nervous system has been carrying since you were small enough to be held. Consider David. He is 34 years old, earns well into 6 figures managing logistics for a regional firm, and has a savings account that most people his age would consider genuinely impressive. He also feels, without fail, a small but precise jolt of fear every single time he opens his bank application. His thumb hovers over the icon for a half-second longer than it should. His chest tightens. He checks the balance, sees that it is fine, exhales, and closes the app. This happens several times a week. He has never told anyone this. He has assumed for years that it is simply a bad habit, a quirk, something he will outgrow. David did not grow up poor. His parents were both employed reliably throughout his entire childhood. The house was warm. The vacations were modest but real. By every external measure, money was not a problem in that household. Except that every Sunday evening, without fail, David's parents would sit at the kitchen table after dinner and go through the week's expenses. And they did it quietly. That was the thing. They did it in hushed, controlled voices. Even as a child, David understood that the quiet itself was a kind of alarm, not the shouting kind, the contained kind, the kind that signals something is too serious to be spoken at full volume. He would sit in the next room watching television, and the sound of those low voices would enter him the way cold air enters a room before anyone opens a door. You feel it before you understand it. His nervous system made a note. Money is dangerous. Money requires vigilance. Money is the thing that makes capable adults look afraid. He has been living inside that note ever since. Here is what matters about David's story. He is not unusual. He is representative of a very large group of people who carry significant financial anxiety while simultaneously believing they have no legitimate reason to carry it. And that second belief, the one that tells you your fear is illegitimate, is in many ways more damaging than the fear itself. It prevents you from ever investigating the source. Revisit your ordinary days back then, 3 years ago, before hindsight edits it. Not financially, emotionally, when it came to money. Were you making decisions from a place of steadiness or from a place of low-level alarm? Were you spending to soothe something or avoiding spending to control something? And here is the harder version of that question. Do you know where that alarm first started? Most people cannot answer that last question. The reason is that ambient trauma, the kind absorbed from the emotional environment around you, not from a single event, leaves no obvious scar to examine. It leaves a setting, a baseline, a nervous system calibrated to treat financial information as a potential threat, regardless of what that information actually says. This is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is the ordinary result of an extraordinary sensitivity that all human children share, the sensitivity to the emotional states of the people responsible for their survival. When those people feel afraid, the child's nervous system learns to feel afraid too. That is not dysfunction. That is the nervous system doing its job correctly, in the exact situation it was designed for. The problem comes when that calibration never updates. When you are 34 and managing 6 figures and your thumb still hesitates over a bank app icon because somewhere in your nervous system, it is still Sunday evening and your parents are talking too quietly at the kitchen table. Dysregulation is expensive. That is not a metaphor. When your nervous system is in a low-grade threat response, your decision-making narrows. Research on stress and cognition consistently shows that people in states of perceived scarcity, and this is crucial, perceived scarcity, not actual scarcity, make choices that prioritize immediate relief over long-term gain. They avoid information that might increase anxiety. That is why so many capable, intelligent adults do not open their financial statements. They discount the future. That is why someone can rationally understand the value of investing and still never actually begin. The threat response was designed for a world where tomorrow was uncertain. It was not designed for building a retirement account. Your body has been keeping a ledger. Every Sunday evening silence. Every overheard conversation where someone said the words "we just cannot afford it" with a particular kind of exhaustion. Every time a parent flinched at a price tag, or changed the subject when money came up, or smiled too quickly when you asked if everything was okay. Those entries are real. They are physiological. They live in the tension of your shoulders and the hesitation before you name your price, and the inexplicable desire to spend exactly enough to feel temporarily safe. And here is the revelation that changes the entire frame. You do not need to have been poor to carry poverty trauma. Witnessing parental financial fear is sufficient, on its own, to wire the threat response around money into a nervous system that is still developing. A child who grew up watching their parents live in quiet, managed terror about finances inherits the emotional architecture of that terror, even if they never personally experienced deprivation. The body does not distinguish between what happened to you and what you watched happen to the people you depended on for survival. It simply learns what the world is like and responds accordingly. This is hopeful, not immediately but structurally. If the calibration came from signals you absorbed, then it can be recalibrated through new signals you deliberately introduce. The ledger running in your nervous system since childhood is not sealed. It is not permanent. As this book keeps moving, we arrive at an argument about how financial habits form that breaks with the story most people inherited. When that point settles, it changes how you approach every money decision you make going forward. But you cannot get there by skipping this step. You cannot rewrite a ledger you refuse to acknowledge. Go back to the question you have been holding since the beginning of this chapter. What did money feel like in the room you grew up in? Not the facts of it, the feeling, the temperature of it. Because somewhere in that answer is the first entry in your ledger. Somewhere in that answer is the moment your nervous system decided, without your conscious permission, that money meant danger. David found his entry on a Sunday evening when he was 7 years old. He was sitting on a carpet he still remembers the color of, hearing his parents talk in voices that told him everything was fine and communicated something entirely different. He did not need to be told. He already knew. The body always knows. Safety has to come before anything else can grow. That is not a soft idea. That is the architecture of every sustainable financial life you have ever looked at from the outside and wondered how they did it. They did it because somewhere along the way, they stopped operating inside a threat response. The money decision stopped feeling like survival and started feeling like choice. What would it mean for you if money stopped feeling like something to survive? Chapter 3. Fight, Flight, Freeze, the hidden 𝗡𝗢𝗧𝗘 statement. Spending more money is not your real problem. That sounds like something a person says to let you off the hook. You are already suspicious of it. But stay here for a moment because the claim is not about permission. It is about precision. If you have ever tracked your budget, cut your subscriptions, made a plan on a Sunday night, and then found yourself 3 weeks later back in the same place, more spent, less saved, no closer to where you wanted to be, then the problem was never the plan. The plan was fine. What broke the plan lives below the plan. It lives in the part of you that does not speak in numbers or goals or intentions. It speaks in sensations. Until you learn to read that language, every financial strategy you try is a translation error. This chapter is about learning to read it, not as a concept, as a map you can actually use. What would it mean for you if money stopped feeling like something to survive? Sit with that question. Because if your honest answer is that you cannot quite imagine it, then what you are about to hear is going to name something you have been carrying for a very long time without having words for it. Your nervous system runs 3 core programs when it senses danger: fight, flight, freeze. You already know these words. What you probably do not know is that each one has a financial expression. So consistent, so predictable, so perfectly mapped onto the physiology that once you see it, you will never look at your bank statement the same way again. A single question drives this chapter from start to finish. It is one most financial educators never think to ask. Why do 2 people with the same income, the same opportunities, and the same stated goals end up in completely different financial positions 5 years later? The standard answer is habits, discipline, financial literacy. But that answer does not hold up against people who have all 3 and still cannot move. The real answer is older than habits, older than education. It is carved into the nervous system before any of that arrives. Let us start with fight. When the nervous system fires the fight response, something very specific happens. Your jaw tightens. Your chest rises. Blood moves toward your large muscles and away from your digestion. You feel a surge of energy that wants an outlet and wants it now. The whole system is built around one word: control. Fight is the body's attempt to dominate the source of the threat before it can do more damage. Now listen to how that translates financially. The fight responder spends aggressively, not carelessly, aggressively. There is a difference. The purchase feels like power. The new car is not just transportation. It is a signal to the world, and more importantly to the nervous system, that you are not at the bottom, you are not small, you are not without resources. The fight responder often earns well. They push hard at work, they negotiate, they take risks. But the money that comes in leaves with the same force it arrived with. Spending is the nervous system's way of staging a counterattack against a threat that never quite shows its face. The threat is old, the spending is now, but to the body the transaction is the same. You might know someone like this, you might be someone like this, and here is the cruel irony. The fight responder often looks successful from the outside. The income is real. The confidence is real. But the net worth tells a different story. Every surge of earning is met with an equal surge of output, and the ledger never gets to rest. Now consider flight. Flight is speed. It is the body deciding that the fastest way to survive is to not be where the danger is. Physically, you feel it as restlessness. a need to move, to do something, to be anywhere but here. Your thoughts accelerate. The idea of stillness becomes almost unbearable because stillness means the threat catches up with you. The financial expression of flight is avoidance, procrastination, the unopened credit card statement, the retirement account you keep meaning to set up, the raise you never asked for because asking required you to sit in the discomfort of that conversation long enough to actually have it. The flight responder is often extraordinarily productive at everything except the specific financial tasks that require facing actual numbers. Because facing the numbers means staying still. And staying still means the old feeling comes rushing in. Think about how many times you have said, "I really need to deal with my finances," and then opened a browser tab, called a friend, reorganized your desk, and arrived at the end of the day having done everything except that. That is not laziness. That is your nervous system running a very old, very reliable protection protocol. Flight keeps you moving. Movement feels like survival. The fact that survival and progress are not the same thing is something the nervous system does not care about at all. Call up your ordinary days back then, 3 years ago, before hindsight edits it. Not financially specifically, but in your body. Were you resting easily, or were you always one step ahead of something? Were you making decisions from stillness or from motion? The pattern in your finances and the pattern in your body almost always match. That is the mirror moment, not a metaphor, a literal request. What you are looking for in your own history is a pattern, and patterns reveal the program. And then there is freeze. Freeze is the most misunderstood of the 3 responses because from the outside it looks like a character flaw. It looks like apathy. It looks like someone who does not care enough to try. But freeze is not the absence of effort. It is the nervous system's last resort when fight and flight both fail. When neither fighting nor fleeing is an option, the body shuts down. Heart rate drops. Breath goes shallow. The mind goes quiet in a way that is not peace, it is suspension. You are present but not processing. You are there but not moving. Meet David. David is 31. He builds custom websites for small businesses from his apartment in Cleveland. He is good at it, genuinely good. His clients keep him, refer him, and tell him he charges less than anyone they have ever worked with. That last part is not a compliment. But David receives it like one, because the alternative, raising his rates, requires him to do something his body has decided is catastrophically dangerous. David has not raised his rates in 4 years. Not once. His costs have gone up. His skills have expanded. 3 of his clients now run 6-figure businesses that would not exist without the sites he built them. And yet the number he types into his invoices is the same number he typed when he was just starting out, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, hoping someone would take a chance on him. When you ask David why he has not raised his rates, he will give you reasons. The market is competitive. His clients are small businesses. He does not want to seem greedy. He is still building his portfolio. Every one of these reasons sounds logical. Every one of them is real to him. But none of them is the actual reason. The actual reason lives in David's chest. He told me once, almost accidentally, in the middle of a conversation about something else, that the moment he even thinks about sending a higher invoice, he feels a tightness that starts in his sternum and spreads outward. He said it feels like waiting for something bad to happen. He could not name what. He just knew that asking for more had, at some point in his life, been followed by something painful, and his body had filed that information permanently under the heading, "Do not do that." David is frozen, not lazy, not comfortable, frozen. His nervous system made a decision before he had the language to argue with it, and that decision is now writing his invoices. After David left the room, one thing stayed with me. He did not need another pricing strategy. He did not need a formula for raising rates. He needed his nervous system to believe that asking for what he was worth would not end with the loss of something essential. Until that belief lives in the body, not just the mind, every pricing guide in the world is useless. David's story closes the loop we opened earlier. You remember the question, why two people with the same income and the same tools end up in different places. David is not behind because he lacks information. He is behind because he is running a freeze program written by an experience he barely remembers. And that program charges exactly what it charged 4 years ago. Here is the revelation this chapter has been building toward. It deserves to land without anything softening it. Every stress response has a financial expression. Fight spends for power. Flight avoids for safety. Freeze underearns for survival. Your spending patterns, your earning ceiling, your money avoidance, your aggressive accumulation, none of these are financial behaviors. They are nervous system behaviors that happen to involve money. Your bank statement is not a record of your decisions. It is a record of your most persistent physiological state. That is not a comfortable thing to sit with. But comfort was never the point. Because once you know this, something shifts. Not everything, not yet, but something. You stop looking at the numbers as evidence of your character and you start looking at them as evidence of your history. And history, unlike character, can be worked with. History has a source. Sources can be traced, understood, and over time changed. Your spending and your earning are not who you are. They are what your nervous system learned to do when safety felt like a thing that could run out. In a later section, we arrive at an argument about discipline and financial consistency that breaks with the story most people inherited. After that really registers, it changes how you actually approach building money over time. But for now, here is what Chapter 3 leaves you with. Safety is not a reward you get after you fix your finances. Safety is the condition your nervous system requires before it will let you fix them. The ledger your body has been keeping does not lie. The question is whether you are finally ready to read it clearly. Chapter 4. Wealth feels like danger to a scared body. Something valuable is leaving your hands already. It is not your fault, and most people will never tell you what it is. Every time you have come close to earning real money, more than you were used to, more than felt familiar, something inside you moved to stop it. Not slowly, quickly. The opportunity collapsed, or you did, or both at once. The gap between where you are and where you could be is not just this year's difference. That gap is compounding. It is the investment you did not make. The contract you did not keep. The rate you undercharged because something told you that charging more was dangerous. The invisible mechanism doing this work is not your discipline, not your intelligence, not your worth. It is your nervous system running a program it learned long before you were old enough to question it. This chapter is going to name that mechanism precisely, and once you can name it, it loses a significant portion of its power over you. Read what the previous chapter left you with. The ledger your body has been keeping does not lie. The question is whether you are finally ready to read it clearly. So let us read one specific entry together right now. The entry is about a man named David. David was a freelance designer. He had been one for 6 years, and in those 6 years he had built something real, a small, steady client base that paid him reliably between $4,000 and $5,000 a month. He was good at his work. Clients renewed. He got referrals, and for 6 years that income sat in that same narrow range as if someone had drawn a line on the wall and said this far and no further. Then a mid-sized tech company found his portfolio and offered him the largest single contract of his career. $40,000 for 5 months of work. His hands were shaking when he read the email, not from excitement alone, from something else, something older than excitement. Something that lived lower in his body and did not have a name he could say out loud at the time. He signed the contract. He cashed the first payment, and within 2 weeks, he had taken on 3 additional clients he had originally planned to decline. Clients who paid poorly and required constant revisions. Clients he had turned away before. He said yes to all of them. He told himself he was building momentum. He told himself this was what growth looked like. But the work compounded until he was sleeping 4 hours a night. His best work for the tech company began to slip. By month 3, the relationship was strained. By month 5, the contract was not renewed. 90 days after the biggest financial opportunity of his career had arrived, David's monthly income had returned to $4,700. He told a friend it was bad timing. He believed that. Here is what was actually happening inside David's body during those 5 months. Your nervous system has one organizing principle. That principle is not success. It is not even happiness. It is survival through familiarity. The nervous system is a prediction machine. It builds a model of the world based on repeated experience, and then it works continuously to make your present match that model. Not because it wants you to fail, because a known world is a safe world. An unknown world is a threat. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable neurobiology. When the conditions of your life diverge significantly from the conditions your nervous system was calibrated to expect, the system registers that divergence as danger. Then it begins working to correct it. Think of it like a thermostat, but not the motivational kind people talk about when they say you have to set your inner temperature higher. Forget that version for a moment. The thermostat your body runs is not metaphorical, it is physiological. Your nervous system has a literal set point, a range of arousal, safety, and familiar conditions that it has learned to call normal. When your life exceeds that range upward, the system does not celebrate. It sounds an alarm, a quiet alarm, an alarm that does not make noise. It makes behavior. That is what happened to David. The $40,000 contract pushed his internal conditions outside the known range. His body did not read that as opportunity. His body read it as emergency. The behavior that followed, the irrational yes to 3 bad clients, the collapse of his best work, the erosion of the opportunity itself, was not weakness. It was homeostasis. His nervous system was doing exactly what nervous systems do. It was returning the temperature to the known setting. This is the entry the ledger was trying to show you. Think about the last time you were close to something significantly better than your current situation. Not a small improvement, a real one. A raise that would have changed your options, a client that would have doubled your income, an investment that felt like it was finally working. Think about what happened in your body the moment that possibility became real, not what you thought, what you felt. Somewhere in your chest or your stomach or the back of your neck, there was a signal. You may have called it excitement, but underneath the excitement, if you go looking, there was something else. A pressure, a pull backward, a quiet internal argument that sounded like practical concern but felt like fear. That is the signal. That is the ledger speaking. And here is what most financial advice will never tell you. Every strategy in the world, every budget, every investment vehicle, every income growth framework operates on the assumption that when a good opportunity arrives, you will take it and hold it. The entire architecture of conventional financial guidance assumes a nervous system that responds to opportunity with expansion. But if your nervous system was calibrated in conditions of scarcity, uncertainty, or chronic low-grade threat, it does not expand toward opportunity. It contracts. And no strategy survives that contraction for long. Dysregulation is expensive. That is not a dramatic statement. It is a cash flow observation. There is a question this chapter opened without answering, and it is time to close it now. The question was not just what is being taken from you. The question underneath that one is, why does the taking keep happening at the same threshold, at the same moment, in the same way, no matter how hard you work between those moments? The answer is that the threshold is not a financial ceiling. It is a nervous system ceiling. And ceilings built inside the body require a different kind of tool to raise than ceilings built in a spreadsheet. But here is what carries hope inside all of this. The nervous system's drive toward homeostasis is not a flaw. It is a feature. It is the same mechanism that will eventually stabilize you at a higher set point once that higher point becomes familiar enough to feel safe. The problem is not the mechanism. The problem is what the mechanism was originally calibrated to. A body that learned early that money disappears, that prosperity makes you a target, that having more than enough means something bad is coming. That body built a set point around scarcity, not because scarcity is good, because scarcity was familiar, and familiar was survivable. The work, then, is not to push harder against the ceiling every time you approach it. The work is to change what the body recognizes as home. A woman named Carmen figured this out in the least expected way. She had been a sales consultant for 8 years. And every time her annual income neared $80,000, she would lose her 2 or 3 largest accounts within the same quarter. New ones would come. The total would drift back down. The pattern repeated 4 times before she stopped calling it a coincidence. She did not hire a business coach. She started paying attention to what happened in her body in the weeks before the losses. She noticed she was sleeping less. She noticed she was shorter with clients she valued. She noticed she was making small decisions that carried large costs later, skipping follow-up calls, delaying proposals, letting promising conversations go quiet. None of these felt like self-sabotage while she was doing them. They felt like managing a very full schedule, but the pattern was there. And it matched the same arc every time. Her body was getting loud at a specific dollar amount, and loud bodies make expensive decisions. Carmen's shift did not come from identifying the behavior. It came from asking a different question. Instead of asking, why do I keep losing the accounts, she asked, what does earning $90,000 mean to my nervous system that earning $65,000 does not? That question led her somewhere her accounting software never could. Before long, we arrive at an argument about financial habits that breaks with the story most people inherited. Once that becomes real to you, it changes how you approach every money decision you make from that point forward. For now, stay with this one thing. Your body is not broken. Your body is loyal. It is loyal to the world it was trained to expect, and it will work tirelessly to recreate that world. Because recreation is the only form of safety it knows. When abundance feels dangerous, it is because somewhere in the ledger, abundance was dangerous. Or it arrived alongside something painful, or it disappeared suddenly enough that your system decided it was safer not to reach for it at all. The body's job is to return to the known. When the known is scarcity, abundance is treated as an emergency. The only path forward is not strategy. It is making safety and abundance the same experience, one moment at a time, until the body updates what it calls home. What would it feel like to earn more and feel safer doing it than you do right now? Chapter 5. Why affirmations make dysregulated people worse. Telling yourself you are safe when your body believes you are dying does not calm you down. It makes your nervous system distrust you more. That sounds like a reason to abandon all inner work, all self-talk, all effort to believe something better about your life. It is not. It is a precise, testable observation about what happens inside a body already running a threat response when you try to paste a positive thought on top of it. Once you understand the exact mechanism, you will stop wondering why the affirmations never worked, and you will start doing something that actually does. Here is the question this chapter is going to hold open before answering it. If positive self-talk is one of the most widely taught tools in personal development, recommended in thousands of books and seminars and late-night infomercials for 40 years, why do so many people who use it daily still feel stuck, still feel broke, still feel like their body is pulling them backward every time their mind tries to move forward? Hold that question. The answer is closer than you think, but it needs a foundation first. You have probably tried affirmations at some point. Maybe you said them in the mirror every morning for a week. Maybe you wrote them in a journal, taped them to your fridge, recorded them in your own voice and played them while you slept. And somewhere in the middle of all that effort, some quiet part of you noticed that nothing changed. Not in your bank account, not in the low-grade hum of anxiety you carried into every financial decision, not in the way your chest tightened when you looked at your monthly expenses. You kept saying the words, the feeling never arrived. That is not a failure of commitment. That is the wrong tool for the job. Look back 3 years in your mind, not just financially, but physically. Think about how your body felt on a day when money was tight. The shallow breath, the contracted chest, the way your thoughts narrowed down to a single loop. You were not just worried. Your body was running an ancient program designed to help mammals survive immediate physical danger, and that program was using your finances as its trigger. Affirmations did not reach that program. They were not designed to. Here is what was happening underneath the words. There is a part of your nervous system, a network of nerves running from your brain stem down through your heart and gut that is constantly scanning the environment and deciding one thing: am I safe or am I not? This network is not making logical decisions. It is not reading your journal entries. It is responding to signals far below the level of conscious thought: the rhythm of your breath, the tension in your muscles, the tone of voices around you, the posture your body holds when you sit down to look at your finances. 𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗔𝗡𝗧, a neuroscientist, spent decades mapping this system. He called it 𝗡𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗘, a term that describes the layered structure of the vagus nerve and how it governs the body's movement between states of safety, mobilization, and shutdown. You do not need to memorize the science. What you need to understand is this. Your nervous system has 3 broad states. Only one of them allows you to think clearly, take calculated risks, and hold a sense of future possibility. That state is regulated. The other 2, fight or flight and freeze, are survival states. In survival states, your brain does not have access to the same cognitive real estate. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, emotional regulation, and evaluating risk, goes quiet. Perception narrows. The horizon of time collapses inward until only the immediate threat matters. Now here is where affirmations walk into trouble. Affirmations are a prefrontal cortex tool. They work by using conscious language to interrupt a thought pattern and install a different one. That is a real and useful mechanism when the nervous system is regulated. When you already feel reasonably safe, saying, "I am capable of earning more," can genuinely prime your brain toward opportunity spotting, toward confidence in your actions, toward the kind of low-level preparation that eventually pays off. The affirmation lands in fertile ground. But drop that same affirmation into a body running a survival state, and something different happens. The nervous system does not process it as encouragement. It processes it as a mismatch. Your body is broadcasting one signal: danger, contract, protect, and your mouth is saying the opposite. The deeper the survival response, the more the nervous system perceives that mismatch as a threat in itself. The body does not experience cognitive dissonance as a philosophical puzzle. It experiences it as noise. And when the noise increases, the survival response often intensifies rather than softens. This is the mechanism nobody in the personal development industry wants to discuss at the seminar. Meet 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗧𝗔𝗡. She was 28 years old, working as a freelance graphic designer in a mid-sized city. She had been following a strict morning routine for almost 2 years. She woke at 5:30, recited 17 affirmations pulled from 4 different books, meditated for 10 minutes, and then spent the rest of her morning trying not to check her bank balance before noon. The number there destabilized the mood she had spent an hour constructing. The affirmations were specific. I am a magnet for high-paying clients. Money flows to me easily and without struggle. I am worthy of financial success. She said them clearly. She meant them. She sometimes felt a flicker of something that resembled belief. But by 9 a.m., when the first email of the day brought a late payment notice from a client who owed her $600, every word she had said dissolved. Her chest tightened. Her jaw set. She sent a professionally worded follow-up email and spent the next 4 hours unable to focus on any new work. Her nervous system had registered the threat and was now holding her there, inside it, waiting for resolution that never came. The affirmations had not made her worse. But they had done nothing to build the foundation they needed to stand on. 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗧𝗔𝗡 was not failing at mindset. 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗧𝗔𝗡's body had learned, somewhere earlier in her life, that financial uncertainty meant real danger, not inconvenience, danger. That learning was stored not in her thoughts but in her tissue, in the pattern of her breath, in the speed with which a single email could pull her out of her prefrontal cortex and into pure reaction. No affirmation addresses that. None. This is what the ledger in your nervous system actually contains. Not just memories, patterns. Not just patterns of physical instructions. Your body has been quietly keeping records of every time money meant threat, every time abundance got followed by loss, every time someone who had more became someone who took more from you. That ledger is not metaphorical. It is encoded in the length of your exhale, in whether you breathe from your chest or your belly when you open your banking app, in whether your shoulders rise when someone asks what you earn. The personal development industry has spent 4 decades telling you that the problem is what you think. Change your thoughts and your results will follow. This idea is partially true and dangerously incomplete in that exact order. Yes, your thoughts influence your behavior. But your body influences your thoughts first. You do not think your way into a regulated state. You regulate first, and then clear thinking becomes available to you. The sequence matters enormously. Reversing it is why so many intelligent, motivated, hardworking people stay financially stuck despite doing everything the books say to do. Dysregulation is expensive. Sit with that for a moment. Every decision you make while your nervous system is in survival mode costs more than the same decision made from a regulated state. You accept lower rates because negotiating feels like conflict and conflict feels like danger. You avoid opening bills because the number might confirm the fear your body is already holding. You spend impulsively because the nervous system in shutdown craves any stimulus that mimics relief. You undersell yourself in conversations that could have led to better opportunities, not because you lack the skill, but because your body read the room as unsafe before you even spoke. None of those are strategy errors. All of them are somatic ones. Here is the answer to the question we left open at the beginning of this chapter. The reason positive affirmations fail so many people, despite decades of endorsement, despite genuine sincerity, despite real effort, is that they are designed for a regulated mind and delivered to a dysregulated body. The body is not being stubborn. It is not failing to believe hard enough. It is doing exactly what it was built to do, prioritizing survival over aspiration every single time without apology, without exception. And this is where something important shifts. If the problem is somatic, if it lives in the body and not just the belief, then the solution is also somatic. It is physical, practical, and learnable in the same way any physical skill is learnable. You do not need a different narrative about money. You need a body that can tolerate the feeling of having more of it. You need a nervous system that does not read financial opportunity as a threat to be neutralized. Safety before abundance. Not because safety is more virtuous than ambition, but because your body cannot pursue abundance while it is busy protecting you from it. What does that actually look like in practice? The tools that build nervous system regulation are specific and evidence-based. They work on a different layer than affirmations do. They work on the body's own language, breath, movement, rhythm, tone, sequence of sensation. Not instead of thinking, but before it. They create the ground that affirmations could never find on their own. That ground is exactly where the next chapter begins. The question is not whether you are willing to say better things about your financial life. You have probably proven you are. The question is whether your body is ready to believe them. Chapter 6. Regulate first, decide second. Something is being taken off your side of the table already. It has nothing to do with a bad investment or a missed opportunity. Every financial decision you make from a dysregulated nervous system costs you money. Not in theory, in actual dollars. The rate you settled for when you could have held your ground. The deal you rushed because your chest got tight and you needed the discomfort to stop. The bill you ignored for 3 weeks because opening it felt like standing at the edge of something. Each one of those moments had a price. That price did not disappear when the moment did. It quietly attached itself to the next decision, and the one after that, compounding in a ledger your bank account can read even when you cannot. The mechanism behind all of it is not weakness. It is not a lack of financial knowledge. It is a nervous system that was never given the tools to feel safe enough to think clearly. That is the problem this chapter addresses directly. The previous chapter left you with a question your affirmations could not answer. You have probably proven many times over that you are willing to say better things about money. But your body has its own vote. And for most of your life, that vote has been cast before you ever reached for a pen, picked up the phone, or opened a tab you have been avoiding for days. Here is something worth sitting with before we go any further. What if the single highest return skill you could build this year was not a new income strategy? What if it was the ability to move your body from threat to safety in under 60 seconds, on demand, before the moments that matter most? That question is going to need some unpacking. Let it live in the background for now. Regulation is not a wellness concept. It is not the soft counterpart to the hard work of financial discipline. It is a prerequisite. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that calculates risk, reads a contract, holds a number steady during negotiation, and says no when no is the right answer, does not function at full capacity when your nervous system is in a threat response. This is not philosophy. It is the mapped architecture of a human brain. When your body reads a situation as dangerous, blood and metabolic resources shift towards survival systems. The thinking brain steps back, the surviving brain steps forward, and money situations for most people register as dangerous, not in the way a car accident registers as dangerous, in the quieter, more chronic way that a tight chest before a billing conversation registers as dangerous, the way a slight nausea when you check your balance registers as dangerous. These are not dramatic responses. They are small. They happen so regularly that you have probably stopped noticing them and started calling them something else, stress, or just how things are, or the particular fog that settles over your thinking whenever the topic is money. That fog is your nervous system doing what it was built to do: protect you. It just does not know the difference between a predator and a price negotiation. Your body learned its threat responses in a very specific set of conditions. It applies them to every situation that rhymes with those conditions, even loosely, even 20 years later, even when the situation is just an email with the word invoice in the subject line. Dysregulation is expensive. This is not a metaphor. It is a line item. Bring to mind your ordinary days back then, 3 years ago, before hindsight edits it. Not where you hoped to be, not where you imagined yourself, where you actually were. Think about the specific decisions you avoided, the ones you rushed, the numbers you named that were lower than what you needed because the conversation felt like too much to hold. Now think about what even one of those moments might have cost you if it had gone differently. One rate held, one contract read fully, one conversation completed instead of escaped. That cost is not a story about your character. It is a story about your state, your physiological state in that exact moment. The good news, and there is real good news here, is that your state is not fixed. It is not a personality trait. It is not fate. Your nervous system is responsive. It changes in response to inputs you can deliberately choose, including inputs that take less than a minute to complete. What researchers call self-regulation, and what you are going to come to think of as a money skill, is simply the practiced ability to shift your physiological state before the moments that require you to think clearly and act from your actual values rather than your oldest fears. There are 3 specific practices worth knowing right now, not because they are the only ones that work, but because they connect directly to the kinds of financial moments that shape a life. The first is called a physiological sigh. It is 2 short inhales through the nose followed by 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. The double inhale reinflates the small air sacs in the lungs that partially collapse under stress. The extended exhale activates the branch of your nervous system responsible for slowing your heart rate. It takes about 5 seconds, and it measurably shifts your body's threat reading in that time. The specific practice is simple. Before you open any financial document, a bank statement, a credit card bill, an invoice, a contract, take 1 physiological sigh first. Not because the document is going to change, because you are going to change before you read it. You are going to give your prefrontal cortex a fighting chance to stay in the room. The second practice is a body scan before any pricing conversation, not a long one, 30 seconds. Start at the top of your head and move your attention slowly downward. You are not looking for anything in particular. You are just checking in. Where is there tightness? Where is your breath short? Where are you braced? The point is not to eliminate those sensations before the conversation starts. The point is to locate them. A sensation you have located and named is a sensation you are not at the mercy of. When you know where the fear lives in your body before the conversation begins, you can feel it move during the conversation without mistaking it for a signal that you should stop. Most people collapse their price, agree to less, or exit the negotiation early because they feel a physical sensation and interpret it as a message. This is too much. End this now. The body scan teaches you to be a more accurate reader of your own signals. The third practice is co-regulation. It is the one people least expect to find in a chapter about financial decision-making. Your nervous system regulates itself in part through proximity to other nervous systems that are already regulated. This is not a metaphor either. It is how humans are built. You have had this experience. You have been in a conversation with someone who was genuinely calm, not performing calm, actually calm, and you felt yourself settle. Your shoulders dropped. The pace of your thinking slowed. The problem that felt impossible a moment before started to look like something that could be worked through. That was co-regulation, and you can use it deliberately. Before a financial conversation that carries weight, put yourself near a person whose nervous system you trust. A phone call counts. A short walk with a grounded friend before the meeting counts. You are borrowing regulation from a regulated system, and your body accepts the loan instantly. Here is where these practices land in a real moment. David was a freelance audio engineer in his early 30s. He had been charging the same hourly rate for 4 years. Not because he was not good enough to charge more, he was. His clients renewed. They referred him. One of them had told him directly that he was underpricing himself. But every time a new project conversation came up and he felt the moment to name his rate approaching, something tightened in his chest. His number came out smaller than he had planned. He told himself he would raise his rate next time. He had said this 11 times. He had counted. Before the 12th conversation, David did something different. He took 3 minutes alone before the call. He did a single physiological sigh. He ran a body scan and found the tightness sitting in the upper part of his sternum, exactly where it always was. He named it. He said, out loud to no one but himself. There it is. He had also spent the 20 minutes before that call on the phone with his brother. His brother was one of those people who had a particular quality of quiet steadiness. The call was not about the rate negotiation. It was just a regular call. But David got off the phone feeling different than he usually did before these moments. Grounded in a way he could not fully explain. He named his new rate. The client paused. David did not fill the silence. He felt the tightness in his sternum and he let it be there. The client said yes. David did not suddenly become a different person. His history with money did not evaporate. What changed was the 20 seconds before he spoke the number. 20 seconds in a regulated state produced an outcome that 4 years of intention had not. The open loop from earlier in this chapter deserves a close now. What is the highest return skill you could build this year? The answer is exactly what it seemed to be when the question sounded almost too simple. The ability to access a regulated state on demand, before the specific moments when your financial life is actually being shaped. Before you sign, before you name a number, before you open the document you have been avoiding. That ability is a money skill. It belongs in the same category as knowing how to read a profit and loss statement. It belongs there before the profit and loss statement, actually. Because without it, you will misread the numbers no matter how well you understand the math. The best financial decisions of your life will be made from a regulated state. Learning to reach that state on purpose, in the moments that matter, is not self-care adjacent to your financial life. It is the foundation your financial decisions are either built on or undermined by. Down the line in this book, we arrive at an argument about discipline and financial progress that breaks with the story most people inherited. When that idea snaps into focus, it changes what you actually do on the hard days. For now, carry this. Your nervous system is not a personality, it is a skill. Chapter 7. The Inheritance You Never Asked For. Saving less money is sometimes the most financially responsible thing you can do. That sounds like permission handed out by someone who wants you to feel better about spending. It is not. It is a precise observation about what happens when a nervous system trained in scarcity tries to manage abundance, and why the frugality that kept one generation alive can quietly bankrupt the next one. Here is the tension you probably feel but have never named. You do the right things. You read the articles. You set the budget. You tell yourself this month will be different, and then something invisible reaches up through the floor of your good intentions and pulls you back to exactly where you started. Not because you are weak, not because you lack information. Because somewhere inside you there is a program running that was written before you were born, and no amount of willpower can override a program you do not know exists. That program has a name, and by the end of this chapter, you will recognize it in yourself. Go back to your ordinary days back then, 3 years ago, before hindsight edits it, not in terms of income or address or relationship status. Think about the feeling you had about money, the tightness in your chest when you checked your account, the way you hesitated before buying something you actually needed, the low-grade dread that followed you even on good days. Now ask yourself honestly, does that feeling belong to you, or did you inherit it the way you inherited the shape of your hands? The science here is newer than most people realize. Epigenetics is the study of how experience changes the way genes express themselves. Not the genes themselves, but whether certain genes switch on or switch off depending on environment. Researchers have documented this in the children and grandchildren of famine survivors, Holocaust survivors, and people who lived through sustained economic collapse. The body records severe stress. It passes that recording along, not as a story. As a biological setting, your grandmother did not sit you down and tell you money was dangerous. She did not have to. Her nervous system, shaped by whatever scarcity she survived, communicated through behavior, through tone of voice, through the way she flinched when a bill arrived, through what she did not say when money came up in conversation. Your parent absorbed those signals the way a child absorbs language, not by studying them but by living inside them. And you absorbed your parent. This is not metaphor. This is measurable transmission of a survival posture across generations. What does a survival posture look like in someone who has never experienced the original threat? It looks like freezing when an opportunity requires you to spend in order to earn. It looks like hoarding, not possessions necessarily, but options. Keeping every door open because closing one feels like permanent loss. It looks like chronic underselling of your own work, because somewhere in the inherited code, asking for too much triggers a threat response. It looks like a strange restlessness when things are going well, as if your body does not trust calm and goes looking for the emergency it was prepared to find. Dysregulation is expensive. You have heard that before in this book, but this chapter is asking you to go one level deeper. Some of the dysregulation you are paying for was not purchased by your choices. It came with the body you were handed. David was 31 when he figured this out. He was not broke. He was doing fine by most measures. A steady income, some savings, a decent apartment. But he could not spend on anything that felt like it was for the future. Investments made him feel sick. Signing a long-term lease felt like a trap. Every financial advisor he sat across from said some version of the same thing. David, you have the income to build something, so why do you keep pulling back? He did not have an answer. Then his grandfather died and David helped clear out the house. What he found there did not match the man he remembered. His grandfather had been calm, generous, warm at the dinner table. But in the walls of that house, literally inside the walls and beneath the floorboards, and in boxes stacked behind winter coats in closets, there was cash, rubber-banded rolls of it, old bills in envelopes with no labels, thousands of dollars in small denominations hidden in places no one would ever look unless they were tearing the house apart. His grandfather had survived the Depression as a child. He had watched his own father lose everything in a single week, and for the rest of his 83 years, no matter how stable his life became, his body never stopped preparing for the return of that week. David stood in that gutted house holding a coffee can full of $20 bills, and he felt something shift in him that had nothing to do with the money. He recognized himself, not the hoarding. He had not done that, but the refusal to invest in the future. The way he treated every financial decision like it might be the one that cost him everything. The thing he had assumed was a personality flaw, something careful and cautious and his own. He saw it now as a hand-me-down. His grandfather's terror, compressed into a biological instruction, passed through his father's household like something in the air, and David had breathed it in without ever knowing there was anything unusual about the air. That recognition did not immediately fix anything. Recognizing an inheritance is not the same as refusing it, but it changed the nature of the problem. Here is what changes when you understand where the program came from. The question shifts from what is wrong with me to what does this code think it is protecting. That is a completely different question. One creates shame. The other creates room to work. Your nervous system does not know what century it is. It does not distinguish between your grandfather's breadline and your current slowdown at work. It registers threat signals, and it responds with the protocols it was handed. Those protocols kept someone alive once. They are not wrong. They are just pointed at a danger that no longer exists in the form it originally took. And here is where this gets genuinely strange. When you do the work of regulating a pattern that was passed down to you, when you feel the freeze response and learn to move through it instead of becoming it, you are not only changing yourself, you are interrupting a line. Research on intergenerational transmission suggests that what one generation heals, the next generation inherits differently. You do not just stop carrying the pattern, you change what you pass forward. Your children, or those who come after you in whatever form, will start from a different default setting than you did. Generational wealth starts with interrupting generational nervous system patterns. You are healing backward and forward simultaneously. The person doing the work now is the hinge point. You did not cause the original wound, but you are positioned to be the one who stops the wound from traveling any further. That is not a burden. That is a specific kind of power that no financial strategy, no investment account, no budgeting system can give you, because none of them touch the body's ledger, and the body's ledger is where the actual accounting happens. Now close the loop you opened at the start of this chapter. You felt something familiar in the first few paragraphs. A recognition that some financial pattern in your life has not responded to logic or information or effort. You were waiting to find out what that thing was. Here it is. It is a survival code written by someone else's emergency, running in hardware you inherited, producing outputs that made complete sense in a context that is no longer yours. The frugality that kept your grandmother alive becomes the freeze response that keeps you from buying into the investment you know is sound. The vigilance that got your family through a hard decade becomes the hyper-awareness that makes calm feel suspicious. These are not character flaws. They are loyal old programs doing exactly what they were designed to do. The only problem is the emergency they were built for is over. Safety before abundance. You have heard that phrase thread through this book. This chapter is telling you something specific about what that safety means. It means teaching your body, not just your thinking, but your actual physical nervous system, that the present is not the past, that the threat your cells remember is not the threat you are facing right now, that you can put the money in the ground and it will still be there tomorrow. This work is not soft. It is not secondary to the practical matters of building wealth. It is the foundation those practical matters rest on. Without it, every strategy you adopt will eventually bend back toward the shape of what you inherited. You cannot logic your way out of a body that believes it is still in someone else's emergency. What you can do is show that body slowly and repeatedly that it is safe to stop, safe to invest, safe to ask for what your work is actually worth, safe to sign the lease and take the opportunity and put your name on the thing you have been circling for years. That demonstration is not a one-time event. It is a practice, the same way any skill is practiced. And you have already heard that your nervous system is a skill. Now you know one more thing. It is a skill you are practicing on behalf of more than just yourself. The question that will follow you into the next chapter is this. If the body carries the record of what went wrong, can the body also be the place where the record is finally corrected? Chapter 8. Safe enough to receive building a wealth container. Right now, while you are listening to this, something is leaking. Not dramatically, not all at once. It drains the way a cupped hand drains, quietly, continuously, through gaps you did not know were there. The money you earn arrives and something in you cannot quite hold it. It moves through faster than it should. Opportunities appear and something inside you finds a reason to wait, to hesitate, to let them pass. That is not a budgeting problem. That is not a discipline problem. That is your container failing. And every day it fails, the cost compounds. It never shows up on a single bank statement, but it accumulates across years into a version of your life that is smaller than it needs to be. The mechanism causing that drain has a name. It lives in your nervous system, not your spreadsheet. This chapter is where you finally learn to fix the vessel before you try to fill it again. The previous section put a question on the table without closing it. If the body carries the record of what went wrong, can the body also be the place where the record is finally corrected? The answer is yes. And the answer has a method. Picture your hands held out in front of you, palms up, curved together the way you would cup water from a stream. That image is not a metaphor for this chapter. It is the entire architecture of what we are about to build. Your hands, curved just enough, create a container, not sealed, not permanent, but functional, capable of holding something real for long enough that it matters. Now picture trying to hold that water when your hands are shaking, when your fingers are spread wide from tension, when the muscles in your forearms are braced for something to go wrong. The water does not care how much you want to hold it. It goes where physics allows it to go. A nervous system locked in low-grade threat does the same thing to money. It creates the gaps. It spreads the fingers. Here is what most financial advice gets completely wrong. It hands you a better bucket and tells you the problem is solved. More income, tighter budget, smarter investments. All of it assumes the container is neutral. All of it assumes the vessel you bring to wealth is ready to receive it. Most of the time it is not because you are broken, because no one ever helped you build it. David had a spreadsheet for everything. He had a spreadsheet for his monthly expenses, a spreadsheet for his investment targets, a spreadsheet for the side business he had been meaning to launch for 3 years. He was 29, he worked in logistics, and he was, by every external measure, financially organized. He knew his numbers. He could recite his net worth to the dollar. And yet every time his income nudged upward, something else went wrong. A car repair, an unexpected medical bill, a client who did not pay on time. His financial life had a ceiling that felt like bad luck. David had started to believe in it, that ceiling, the way you believe in weather. As though it were simply a condition of the atmosphere he lived in. What David did not see was that the ceiling was interior. He had grown up watching money create conflict. His parents fought over it in the specific way that leaves marks not shouting exactly, but the low, constant tension of two people managing scarcity together, each one quietly blaming the other. David had learned, somewhere around age 10, that more money meant more exposure, more to lose, more to fight about. More ways things could fall apart. So his nervous system had built a ceiling, not consciously, not deliberately. It had simply learned that financial increase was the precursor to instability, and it had become very good at returning him to a number that felt survivable. For 2 years, David had been postponing a consultation with a financial advisor, someone who worked specifically with small business owners who could help him decide whether the side business was viable. He had her number saved in his phone. He had never called. Every time he thought about calling, something inside him went quiet and flat. He would find something else to do. He told himself he was not ready. He told himself the timing was not right. That flatness, that quiet. That is the container failing. Here is where we need to pause. Think about the financial actions you avoid most consistently. Not the ones you forget about, the ones you think about and then don't do. The ones where the intention is there and the action never quite arrives. You probably have 3 or 4 of them. They show up on a rotating basis. You make a plan to do them, you get close, and something, not an obstacle exactly, something quieter pulls you back. Take a moment right now and let one of those actions come to mind. Just one. Notice what happens in your body when you think about actually doing it. Does your breathing change? Does something tighten across your chest or your shoulders? Does your attention suddenly want to go somewhere else? That physical response is your container. And it is giving you very precise information about where the gaps are. The wealth container is the internal and external set of conditions that allow your body to receive, hold, and act on financial input without ejecting it. It is not a mood. It is not confidence. It is a practice state of nervous system safety that you build deliberately, the same way you would build any other functional capacity. Through repetition, through small exposures, through evidence that accumulates over time. The reason this matters more than any single financial strategy is this. Your nervous system does not distinguish between a real threat and a financial one. When your body has learned to associate money with danger, receiving money triggers the same cascade that receiving danger does. Your heart rate shifts. Your thinking narrows. Your decision-making becomes short-range and self-protective. You are not making financial decisions in those moments. You are making survival decisions. And survival decisions are almost never the same as wealth decisions. Dysregulation is expensive. That is not a figure of speech. When your nervous system is running a threat response, you are paying. With every percentage point of compound interest you are not earning, every negotiation you soften too quickly, every raise you did not ask for, every contract you underpriced because certainty felt safer than what you actually deserved. So how do you build the container? You build it through what I call a safety protocol. And yours needs to be personalized, because the gaps in your particular hands are not the same as the gaps in anyone else's. A safety protocol starts with identification. You name the 3 financial actions you most consistently avoid, not the ones that are logistically difficult, the ones that feel emotionally dangerous. That distinction is precise and important. Logistical difficulty is a resource problem. Emotional danger is a somatic one. Only one of those requires container work. Once you have identified your 3, you build an approach condition for each one. An approach condition is a specific physical state that you cultivate before attempting the avoided action. Not a pep talk, not affirmation. A somatic state, meaning a state in your body. This might be 10 minutes of slow walking before making a difficult financial call. It might be a deliberate 5-breath sequence before opening a bank statement you have been avoiding. It might be sitting with your back fully supported by a chair, feet flat on the floor, before reviewing your business numbers. The specific practice matters less than the principle behind it. You are teaching your nervous system that financial action can happen inside a state of safety. You are building new evidence. New data for the ledger. A little later, you are going to meet a claim about financial confidence that breaks with the story most people inherited. Once that lands, it shifts how you act every single time money is on the line. For now, understand this. The container is built from the outside in. You do not first feel safe and then act. You act in a deliberately created state of relative safety, and the feeling follows. The feeling is not the precondition. It is the result. David eventually called the financial advisor. Not because he suddenly felt ready, he did not. He called on a Tuesday afternoon after 10 minutes of walking in a parking garage near his office, the least romantic setting imaginable for a turning point. His heart was still moving fast when she picked up. But the call happened. They scheduled a consultation for the following week, and in that consultation, David learned that his side business was not only viable, it had a specific structural issue that was easy to correct. He had been 6 months away from something workable for 2 years. He had been losing those 6 months over and over because the container was not built. The ledger in your nervous system has been keeping score since long before you had any say in what it recorded. Every experience of money as threat, money as scarcity, money as the thing that made the people around you smaller or meaner or more frightened, all of it is in there. All of it is contributing to the ceiling you keep returning to. But the body that carries the record is also the body that can rewrite it. You are not healing the past. You are building new evidence forward. Every financial action taken inside a state of physical safety is a deposit into a different ledger. One that says this can be survivable. One that says increase does not have to mean instability. One that says your hands can be still enough to hold this. You cannot hold more wealth than your nervous system believes is safe. That is not a metaphor. That is neurological fact, and the work of expanding what feels safe is not soft work or secondary work. It is the most financially productive work you will do this year. Build the container first. The water will stay. Chapter 9. Rewriting the ledger your body kept. Every culture that has ever survived long enough to leave a record behind understood one thing about human beings. They knew that a person carries their history inside them, not just as memory, as posture, as breath, as the way the jaw tightens before a difficult conversation. Across centuries and continents, healers, elders, and guides of every kind return to the same discovery. You cannot think your way out of what your body has written in. The mind argues. The body simply holds. And right now, in this moment, your body is holding something. The question is not whether the ledger exists. You already know it does. The question that matters, the one that has been building across every chapter of this book, is whether the ledger can be changed. It can. Not erased. Changed. And the way you change it is nothing like what you have been told. The container is built. That is what the last chapter left you with. Build the container first and the water will stay. Now it is time to talk about what you put inside it. Think back to where this book began. The ledger was introduced as a record. Every moment of scarcity you lived through. Every time money felt dangerous. Every time the electricity flickered and nobody talked about it but everybody felt it, that moment got logged. Not in a file somewhere. In your fascia, in your vagal tone, in the microsecond delay between stimulus and response. Your nervous system was doing its job. It was learning the rules of your world and encoding them so you would survive faster next time. The problem is that faster is not always better, and the world you are living in now is not the one those rules were written for. Here is what almost nobody tells you about that ledger. It was never meant to be permanent. Open this question now and hold it. If the nervous system learned scarcity, what does it take to teach it something else? You have probably tried to answer this with logic. You made spreadsheets. You read about compound interest. You told yourself new stories about money. And maybe they helped a little around the edges. But the ledger was not written in language. So language alone cannot rewrite it. The ledger was written in sensation, in the feeling of a stomach dropping, in the particular quality of silence in a house where money was always the unspoken emergency, in the way your shoulders rise slightly whenever you check your account balance, even now, even when the number is okay. Sensation is the language, so sensation is where the rewriting happens. Consider what a regulated moment actually is. Not a happy moment, not a perfect moment, a regulated one. A moment where your nervous system correctly reads the present situation as safe. Your breath is even. Your jaw is loose. Your chest is open rather than braced. You are not anticipating a threat that is not there. You are here, fully, without the low hum of alarm underneath everything. That state is not just comfortable. It is physiologically productive. In that state, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that makes actual financial decisions, is online. In that state, you can see opportunity without immediately calculating what will go wrong. In that state, you are capable of the kind of clear, deliberate action that compounds over time into something real. Every single moment you spend in that regulated state is a new entry in the ledger. That is the revelation this chapter has been building toward. And it is simpler than you expected. You are not erasing what was written before. You cannot, but you can outweigh it, entry by entry, moment by moment. Each time your nervous system stays regulated when it would have previously fired, each time you check your balance and breathe, each time a financial conversation does not spike you into shutdown, each time you make a decision from clarity instead of fear, you are writing a new line. The ledger is not a document from the past. It is a living record, and it is being updated right now. Remember your ordinary days back then, 3 years ago, before hindsight edits it. Not the circumstances, those matter less than you think. Think about how you felt in your body when money came up. Was there tightening? A kind of pre-apology, a bracing? Could you even sit still long enough to look at a bank statement without some part of you wanting to close the window and think about it later? That was the old ledger running the room. It was not weakness. It was a perfectly calibrated response to what you had experienced. But it had a cost. Dysregulation is expensive. The missed opportunities you could not see because your nervous system was scanning for exits. The decisions that were actually reactions. The exhaustion of running old emergency software on a life that no longer required it. That cost was real, but it was also the past. Here is what is different now. You have a body that is capable of learning safety the same way it once learned danger. The same mechanism. The same neurological architecture that encoded scarcity can encode sufficiency. Not by pretending, not by forcing a feeling you do not have, by creating regulated moments, real ones again and again until they begin to stack up against the old record and eventually outweigh it. This is not metaphor. This is how the nervous system physically restructures itself. New patterns require repetition, but the repetition does not have to be dramatic. It can be small. It must be real. There was a woman named Cora who had grown up in a house where every conversation about money ended in an argument or a silence that felt worse than arguing. By the time she was 32, she had a decent income, a savings account she rarely opened, and a persistent sense that everything was about to fall apart despite evidence to the contrary. A therapist eventually asked her to do one thing. Once a day, she was to open her banking app, look at her balance, and stay with her body for 30 seconds before closing it. No action required, just look and breathe. It felt ridiculous. She did it anyway. 3 weeks in, she noticed something. The spike was smaller. Her shoulders did not rise as high. She was not calm exactly, but she was present in a way she had not been before. 6 months later, she had moved money into an investment account she had been putting off opening for 2 years. She did not start investing because she learned something new about investing. She started because her body finally stopped treating the account like a threat. That is how the ledger gets rewritten. And now, back to the question you have been holding. What does it take to teach the nervous system something new? Not a program. Not a single transformative experience. Accumulated evidence. Moment after moment of regulated experience until the body's working theory about the world starts to shift because the data no longer supports the old conclusion. You are the data. Every regulated moment is evidence. Every clear decision is evidence. Every time you stay present with a number instead of fleeing it, you are filing a new record. Safety before abundance has never been a spiritual suggestion. It is a neurological sequence. Safety is the input. Abundance is the output. You cannot reverse the order and expect the system to cooperate. So here is what you carry forward. You are not starting over. You are adding to a ledger that already exists. What you add from here shapes what the whole document says about you. The past entries do not disappear, but they stop being the majority when enough new entries exist alongside them. This is slow work sometimes. It is also the only work that actually holds. What would you be willing to do today to write one new line? Chapter 10. Your healed body is your wealthiest asset. You already know this is the last chapter, and somewhere in your body, right now, something is bracing for the ending. Maybe you are already starting to let go, already half-stepping back into the life that was waiting for you before you pressed play. Notice that. Notice the way your attention starts to drift toward what comes next before you have fully received what is happening right now. That pull, that subtle forward lean away from the present moment, that is the nervous system pattern this entire book has been about. You made it to the final chapter, and your body is already preparing to leave before the door is fully open. Stay. What you are about to hear is not a summary. It is not a conclusion. It is an arrival. And arrivals require you to be present enough to feel them. You have been sitting with a question since the first chapter. Maybe you have not named it, but it has been there beneath everything, threading through every parable and every principle. The question is this: if your nervous system is the instrument your financial life is played on, what does it mean when that instrument is finally in tune? That is the question this chapter answers. But not yet. First, let us go back to David. You met David earlier in this book. A small business owner, mid-30s, technically skilled, chronically underpaid for his work, and unable to understand why. He raised his prices and lost clients. He hired help and then quietly did their jobs for them because he could not tolerate the feeling of things being out of his control. He signed contracts and then second-guessed them at 3 in the morning. He made more money some months and spent it before he could save it, as though the extra amount were a foreign object his life could not hold. David was not confused about business. David was dysregulated, and dysregulation is expensive. His breakthrough did not come from a new strategy. It came from 8 weeks of one practice, noticing before he made any significant decision whether his body felt contracted or open, not optimistic, not confident in the motivational sense, open, spacious, settled, the way you feel after a long exhale on a morning when nothing is demanding anything from you yet. He made no major moves during those 8 weeks. He only noticed. He learned the difference between a decision made from that open state and a decision made from the tight, slightly breathless, mildly urgent state that had been his default for 15 years. Then week 9 arrived. A client offered David a contract 3 times larger than anything he had taken before. His old self would have said yes immediately, from urgency, from fear that this kind of offer did not come twice, from the grasping quality that had colored every financial decision he had ever made. Instead, David paused. He sat with it overnight. He slept, which was new. He woke up and checked in not with his spreadsheet, not with a mentor, but with his body, and his body felt open, settled. Ready in a quiet way rather than a frantic way, he signed the contract. He delivered the work from a regulated state, which meant he delegated. His team rose to fill the space he gave them. The quality was higher than anything he had produced before. That one contract, executed from regulation rather than urgency, led to 2 referrals within the same quarter. David's revenue doubled, not because he finally found the right strategy, because he finally built the right internal condition. One settled decision, made from a body that felt safe, changed the shape of the next 6 months of his life. Look back at where things really stood back then, 3 years ago, before hindsight edits it. Not in terms of your bank account, though that is part of it. Think about how you felt on a regular Tuesday. Think about the quality of your attention, the texture of your typical day, the way your body felt when you thought about money, about the future, about what you were building. Was there a low hum of anxiety running under everything? A sense that you were behind, that the window was closing, that you were one mistake away from something going badly wrong? Most people in that state believe they feel that way because of their circumstances. The truth is, for most of us, the circumstances came second. The feeling came first, and the feeling was recorded long before the circumstances arrived to justify it. That is the ledger. The ledger in your nervous system is not a record of your failures. It is a record of every moment your body concluded that safety was conditional, that resources were scarce, that you had to earn the right to exist in a comfortable state. Those conclusions were written in by experiences you often did not choose and could not fully understand at the time they happened. They are not evidence of weakness. They are evidence that you were paying attention. Your body learned what it needed to learn to survive what it needed to survive. And now it is running that same program in a world where you no longer need it the same way. You are not broken. You are programmed. And programs can be rewritten. That is not a metaphor. It is a description of what the nervous system actually does when you give it the right conditions over enough time. It updates, slowly and then faster than you expect. And then one day you notice that a situation that used to make your chest tight now lands in you with space around it. You notice that you can hold a large number, a large opportunity, a large risk, without contracting. You notice that the feeling of having enough no longer requires a specific account balance to trigger it. It becomes a state you carry into the room rather than a destination you are running toward. That state is your wealthiest asset. Not the strategy, not the contacts, not the product or the service or the offer or the funnel or the investment portfolio. Though all of those matter, all of those are real. But the state you bring to every one of those things determines what they become. A regulated nervous system is not a nice thing to have alongside your financial tools. It is the instrument all the other tools are played on. This is the contradiction most people never resolve. They treat wealth building as a set of external moves, and they are baffled when the moves keep producing the same results. They switch strategies like switching lanes on a highway, never considering that the vehicle itself has a ceiling. Your capacity to receive what you are working for is physiological before it is practical. The body that feels unsafe will find 100 creative ways to stay exactly as unsafe as it has learned to expect. And the body that feels safe will find an equal number of ways to confirm that safety, to grow it, to hold more of it over time. The most valuable thing you will ever invest in is a body that feels safe enough to receive what you have been working for. Do not just read that line, hear it. Let it land in your chest rather than just your mind. You have spent this entire book learning that dysregulation is expensive, that the body keeps a ledger, that safety is not a reward that comes after success, but a condition that makes success possible. You have heard how other people rewrote their records. You have understood the mechanism. Now comes the only part that matters, the part that happens after you stop listening. What you do next does not have to be large. It does not have to be impressive or dramatic or visible to anyone else. You do not need a declaration. You only need one decision made from a settled body rather than a scared one. One moment where you feel the familiar contraction, recognize it for what it is, old programming running on an outdated loop, and choose the open response instead. One line written differently in the ledger, and then another after that. The question you opened this chapter with was, what does it mean when the instrument is finally in tune? Here is the answer. It means that every note you play sounds the way it was meant to sound. It means that work stops feeling like combat. That money stops feeling like a verdict on your worth. That the future stops being a place you are afraid of and starts being a place you are building toward with your hands open rather than clenched. That is not a fantasy. That is a nervous system that has been given new information and has updated its conclusions accordingly. You have the information now. Later, in the conversations you will have and the decisions you will face, and the moments when the old contraction shows up again, because it will remember this. The contraction is not the truth. It is the record, and the record is not permanent. You have already begun rewriting it. The fact that you are here at the end of this book, asking better questions about your body and your money than you were asking before, that is not nothing. That is the first line of a different document. Your nervous system is already listening. What you do with your body today is an investment your bank account will feel next year.